Okay. Inshallah, so let's go ahead and review quickly. We talked about belief with a capital B. And we said in Arabic, the term for belief is Iman, which means belief or faith. And belief means what? Having the proper belief
in the Creator.
In the Creator and all the prophets. So we don't accept some prophets and reject other ones. So that's Iman, belief. And the one who has Iman is called what's he called? Mu'min. The one who has Iman is called a Mu'min. He's a believer. And the other word for believer means what? That we all know. Muslim. And the disbeliever is the one who does not have what? The proper belief in the Creator and or all the prophets. So a disbeliever in Arabic is called a kafir. That's the word is used. So don't let people try to play word games with you. Like you asked me about, I told you this week in deviance from last week. This woman, I was explaining to her that a believer is a Muslim. She was saying, well, why does the Quran say a believer, not a Muslim? And well, a believer is one who what? Believes in the proper belief in God and all the prophets. So by the Islamic understanding, for example, the Buddhist or the Christian or the Hindu or the Jew or the Zoroastrian, for example, these people, they are not believers. We're not saying they're atheists, but they don't have what? The proper belief in the Creator, and they don't believe in all the prophets. Therefore, they are what? Disbelievers, or disbelievers, or in Arabic, kafir. And in Arabic, for plural, it's kuffar, or kafirun, or kafir. So that's it. So it's easy. So now let's go. We got that clarified. Now let's deal. We respond to the Christian objection to the sacred law. Let's review this. This is important. Because, alhamdulillah, we want to learn so we can protect ourselves, but also to defend the religion. Some people, they have questions. They want to know about Islam. And they have these questions. So it's important that there is a communal obligation that some of the Muslims know these types of details to defend the religion and to share the religion. Okay. So typically, the Christian, when they attack Islam, they don't talk about our belief in one God. Like the real belief. They may tell us, oh, this is what you believe, and it's not what Muslims believe. So what do they typically object to when they attack Islam? The rules, the sacred law.
Sacred law.
Yeah, the sacred. Usually, they will either attack the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or they will attack the sacred law. So they say, the Christian says, we're using what method of narration, right? The Christian claims, what does he say? He says, those laws are barbaric. Or something like that. Unjust, barbaric is usually the word that they use. This is what they claim. So often the Muslim will respond by saying what? Muslims, many Muslims, they will say what? The laws of the Old Testament, because these are the things that they claim to follow or that they acknowledge. The laws of the OT means Old Testament are stricter than our sacred law. Okay. The laws of the Old Testament are stricter than our sacred law. That is a fact. So they start by what? Saying you Muslims, your laws you follow, those are barbaric laws. A Muslim may say, well, the laws of the Old Testament are stricter than our sacred laws. That's true. So now the Christian says, what does the Christian say? Those laws of the OT, the Old Testament, were what?
Counseled.
By whom?
Jesus.
Counseled. By Jesus. Those laws of the Old Testament were canceled by Jesus. So now let's mention the truth. Indeed, Moses, we're not talking about the Old Testament now, we're saying what the reality was. Prophet Moses received sacred law, and they were stricter than our sacred law. And indeed, Jesus came with law, and his laws, what? Abolished the law, the genuine laws of Moses. We're not saying the Old Testament is the law of Moses. You follow? But we're talking about from what? Their perspective. They believe the Old Testament is what the laws that are in the Old Testament are the laws of Moses. I'm not saying that everything in the Old Testament are from the laws of Moses. Okay? What's the next move? One, we mentioned about the law. You can just put this as a sidebar. Paul abolished many rules of Jesus. That's a sidebar, just so that you know. FYI, as they say. Paul is the one who came along and he abolished many of the rules that were in the law, the sacred law of Jesus. Paul was the one. So you find, but it's not just Paul, other things through Christian history, you will find that they would keep changing the law. Like, for example, in most of Christian history in Europe, they did not deal with what? Interest, usury, right? And then later, the Christians adopted using usury. Because in the old days, the Jews were the ones that were involved in banking and usury. They were the money changers. This is just historical fact. It is what it is.
They always have been.
Typically, yeah, they've been, because they're not a people of one land. They are lots of different countries. You find they're like traders and different merchants and things like that. So, a lot of the Europeans, they were up in the corner of Europe, they didn't leave it. The Jews would have networks all over.
They traveled there.
They traveled.
They traveled there.
Okay. So, later on, the Christians, this is much way after Paul, but later on, the Christians allowed the usury. But originally, this was seen as a very filthy thing to be involved in. And it's in our Sharia, in our sacred law also, to be involved in usury, this whole thing of interest and all that side, without going into all the details about it. But the general principle, this is among the worst of the worst, among the worst of the sins. Among the worst of the sins. Because you see, it leads to what? Economic collapse. Okay. Let's continue. So we're continuing. I'm going to erase some, but we're going to continue with the flow chart, so to speak. So those laws of the Old Testament were canceled by Jesus. True, that's true. But there's a problem for the Christians. There's a problem. That's true. The rules of the Old Testament, or from even their point of view, well, we know the Mosaic law, let's say, but the Old Testament, even from what they understand, let's put it that way. From what they claim, we said now they still don't get out of the hole because we say what? And they agree with us. Jesus followed we know, we put in brackets, we know,
Mosaic law.
genuine Mosaic law. For most of his time on earth. Do they deny that?
No.
No, they can't deny it. So, following their logic, what did they say about our laws? They said they are what? Barbaric. Because there are certain aspects of religion are strict. They say our law, and when we say strict, we don't mean bad. This is what Allah Ta'ala ordered us to follow. So we don't mean bad. We just say certain rules are strict. Like you cannot be alone in private with a woman. So we have that restriction, meaning a woman that you could potentially marry that you're not married to. So we have certain restrictions. So we're not saying that that's bad. We're just saying that's what Allah Ta'ala ordered for the people. So according to them, they said that what? Our laws are barbaric because they have some of the rulings are strict. Like this issue we mentioned about the thief getting his hand cut off. So if they say that our laws are barbaric, then they would have to say the laws of Moses were even what? More barbaric according to their logic. And even if they say, well, Jesus canceled the laws, what did Jesus follow for most of his time on earth? The Mosaic law. So they're saying Jesus followed their what? Barbaric law. You're fine. What is right and wrong goes back to what the law ordered. It's not based upon our feelings or what is today's opinion about what is right. And then we finish this by saying what?
It'd be good for us to notate that what is right is wrong is
known from the sacred law. What the law is revealed. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's add that at the bottom. But let's finish this and we'll put that at the bottom. According to Christian tradition,
not only did Jesus
not only did Jesus follow this
Mosaic law.
Yeah, this allegedly barbaric law.
They say.
Yeah. They say he, Jesus, alayhi salam, they say Jesus is God. They say. So, Jesus, according to their logic,
The one who ordered
is the one who ordered following these allegedly barbaric laws. You follow? And this all goes back to them not understanding how one knows what is right and wrong. And that goes to what you were saying, what you mentioned.
And that's what y'all was just talking about, basically. You can't do what's right if you don't know what's right.
Yeah, how can you?
Order to do what's right and refrain from the wrong.
You need revelation. You look at when the human beings try to make up their own laws, it's clear, they're unjust. You find all kinds of inconsistencies in them, even when it's assumed, even if one could assume that they were trying to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have enough knowledge about the reality of human existence. Much less what? They don't know what will benefit the person or harm the person in there. What they don't know what they will do in this life that will bring benefit or harm in the
Next life.
in the next life.
Clear.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. It's clear for the one whom Allah Ta'ala makes it clear. That's it. So that's to understand it and be clear about it. This is a ni'mah, endowment from Allah. Because many people won't understand.
Because they like the saying that he could easily make all of us believe if he wanted to.
If Allah had willed it, we would all be.
We've always been believers.
طيب. Okay. Brother Tariq, how much time left on it? Okay, طيب, let's continue. Good, guys. Okay, so that was the first part. We wanted to review that. Now let's go ahead and continue with talking about the rational judgments. Let's get back to that, because this is again one of the most important principles for the one who's involved in teaching the religion and being involved defending the religion, getting strong in the creed, is to understand the rational judgments. How many rational judgments are there?
3.
3. Good. I like the answer. You didn't have to pause or anything. What are they?
Rational necessity.
No, rational necessity. What was the second one?
Rational impossibility.
Rational impossibility. Let me move it down a little bit. Good. You brothers review and get strong with this and understand it, because this is critical to helping defend the religion. Inshallah. What was the third one?
Rational possibility.
Irrational possibility. So the rational necessity refers to
Allah. Rational.
Allah and His attributes. And what does it mean? It means that the one that the mind says must necessarily be, must necessarily exist. And why do we say Allah's existence is a rational necessity?
He's the creator.
No. So we know about the world, what couldn't it be?
Create itself.
It could not have created itself, and it could not be what? Beginningless. So something other than the world that is not created, is not originated, had to have brought the world into being. So that's why we say Allah's existence is what? Necessity, rational necessity. And then with that, we say that Allah has certain attributes. We said there could only be what? One God. The God has no beginning, because whatever has a beginning will be dependent upon the one that brought it into being. The God is not dependent, not contingent. The word they use is contingent. Not dependent upon what? Something else. You say something's contingent, it means this thing depends on what? Something else. You follow? So Allah's existence is not dependent upon something else. Allah will be attributed with knowledge and power and will, as we discussed last week. So the rational necessity, it means the one whose existence the mind says must be. There must be a creator. The rational impossibility, what does it mean? That which cannot exist under any circumstances. And we gave some examples of rational
Square is not a
impossibility.
circle.
What's that?
A square is not a circle.
So a square circle, rational what?
Impossibility.
Impossibility. It's impossible.
A man be a bachelor, a married man is a bachelor.
Or another example we mentioned, we said a married bachelor. Because the words don't add up to anything. The words add up to what? A contradiction. And one of the rules is a thing cannot be contrary to definition. A thing cannot be contrary to definition. Can a squirrel be a rhinoceros?
Nope.
No. Because a squirrel has a definition, a rhinoceros has a definition. So the rational impossibility, that which cannot exist under any circumstances. And the rational possibility, what is it? That which the mind
could potentially exist.
That which the mind says
It could potentially exist.
has the potential to exist. Potential, we're not saying actual necessarily, but it's what?
Potential.
Potential. It may exist, it may not. But the mind says this thing could what? Potentially exist. And then we broke that down into two subcategories, right?
Customary and uncustomary.
Customary and uncustomary. Customary, just like it means, things that we're used to, things we expect. Because experience, that's what we get from experience. You have a fire, a regular fire from some paper is burning, and then you throw water on it. What do you expect? The water is going to douse the fire. That's the customary norm of things.
Normal.
Yeah. Talk about regular fire, talk about like something with oil or something like that. put a regular, just a piece of paper, it's on fire, he gets a cup of water, or, a couple of cups of water, you throw water on it, you expect it, it will go out. Yeah. So it's customary. Why do you expect it to go out? Because that's from your what? Experience. Now somebody, he looks and water is like a clear liquid, right? Right? So a person says, well, since water is a clear liquid and it puts out the fire, so then I can take some rubbing alcohol, it's a clear liquid, and I can put out the fire. Maybe he's ignorant. So if he tries to put the rubbing alcohol on the fire, what's going to happen?
We're gonna blaze up.
It's going to blaze up. So we'll get back to that. But he just took one rule, that this is a clear liquid, water, it puts out fire. So he said, well, then this also was a clear liquid. Perhaps that will also put out fire. But he didn't know that there were some liquids that wouldn't burn. Yeah, some people may not know that. Meaning, might not be exposed to that. Okay. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we're going to continue on this topic. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.